And here we go. So what I'm going to do first and foremost is talk to you about a couple test taking tips. And I think that test taking tips are going to be things that you do need to learn about. And Sam wrote in, can you go over contracts and give real life examples? So yes, I definitely can. And Claire asked for federal laws in regards to some things. So we aren't going to go over any state-specific material here today, guys. So we're going to be respectful of everyone because we're from all different states. So I will be doing only national material. So test-taking tips. Let's go over that. Let's get started. Let's rock and roll. First thing I want to tell you guys is this. Read the question super slow. Okay? Slower than you probably are used to even reading it yourself. And here's the thing. I always tell people this. And a couple of you guys, like I said, you asked for those test-taking tips because you haven't taken a reading comprehension test in a long, long time. So you're like, Stu, what are some things that students really fall victim to? What are some of the things that you have concerns with? And some of them are this. You read too fast. You're missing a piece, a really super important piece to the puzzle, okay? And when you're missing an important piece to the puzzle, you can't answer the question to the best of your ability. So people also ask me too, how slow should I be reading it? Because I say super slow. But some people don't really know how to gauge that. They always say, okay, what is super slow? So what I always say is this. Everyone knows this tempo, this rhythm, and this is the rhythm that I preach every single time. It is read it like you're reading a book to a child. If I put a 3-year-old in front of you, okay? If I put a 3-year-old in front of you, okay? And I said, hey, here, read this book to them. Read like you're reading to a child. So watch this. If I'm reading a question, okay? And I go like this. So here's what happened. We had customer A and customer B, and they were working for brokerage A and brokerage B. And what would happen is this. If a 3-year-old was sitting there, they would say this to you. They'd say, slow down, slow down. So if I took out a Dr. Seuss book and I said, so we had 3 pigs, pig 1, pig 2, pig 3. This one was the color blue. This one was the color red. They would tell you to slow down. So here's the thing. Why aren't we doing that for ourselves? Why aren't we treating ourselves? Because here's the thing. What's really interesting about this, the real estate material that you get, okay, this is super foreign to you. This is obtuse stuff. So what I'm going to tell you is this. You need to treat this like you never have seen this before. This is all foreign to you, just like you're reading a kid a storybook. You're reading a quick a child a storybook, and what happens is you're going to be sitting there saying, they have to understand it, and that's the tempo you need to be at. And I always tell people, I read questions and I read it out loud for them, and I say, listen, this is the tempo. The cow jumped over the moon. Another thing with that is it actually causes you to take breaths between things instead of reading it in one exhale. And here's the thing, that I'm going to talk to you a lot about the physiological stuff that goes on. You get really tense when you read the question really fast. Also, something else that I'll tell you, I'm not a big fan of being super tense when you go to the testing center. So I just had Kevin write in a question. Do you recommend reading through all the questions once before answering? No, I think that's a really tough, like, here's the thing, that in theory could potentially work for some people. Here's what I will tell you. I always talk about the path of least resistance when you're attacking the questions, okay? And what I will tell you is this. First and foremost, I want you to read the question, read the answers, read everything thoroughly and slowly, okay? If you are not coming to an answer, what I would like you to do is simply move on. Simply skip it. Save it for the end, because what happens is something might trigger something in your head. However, if you read it, you understand it, and you can answer it with no resistance, yeah, okay, go ahead, lock your answer in. Don't change your answers, okay? Don't change your answers, okay? So that's something else that I will tell you to do. Don't change your answers, okay? So Kevin, that's a great question that you had for me. I would definitely recommend answering the questions that you feel comfortable with, and saving the ones that you don't. So that's really how you're going to tackle reading comprehension tests. Not be tense, Listen, a couple stupid things. Listen to stand-up comedy. Listen to music. Do some fun stuff for yourself where you're driving to the testing center. Don't listen to YouTube videos. Don't listen to webinars. Don't listen to anything. Don't listen to replays of anything, because that's just going to tense you up. You're going to sit in your car on the way to the testing center and go, oh my God, I don't know that. And if I don't know that, what else don't I know? And oh my gosh. So that is something that will just simply cause you tension. Also, another pro tip, two things, and I'm going to tell you these. What I usually like doing is, go on YouTube. You guys really focus so much on your knowledge. Go on YouTube and type in reading comprehension test tips. Okay, reading comprehension test tips. And what I want you to do is this. I want you to see some of the top videos and go on there and take some time to read that out. And see if there's any tips that really resonate with you. Some of them that resonate with me, okay, is this. First and foremost, when I'm taking a test, I tend to smile a lot, okay? I tend to smile because you actually cannot tense your shoulders up when you smile, okay? If it's a genuine, not awkward smile, that's really a great way to ease some tension. Also, like I said, I listen to some stand-up comedy music before I get to the testing center. And another thing that I do while I'm at the testing center is I'm an aroma kind of guy. Some people love aromatherapy, some don't. I put a little bit of essential oil on my wrist, or like lavender oil on my wrist, so that what happens is I'll take a nice deep breath, inhale, just kind of relax me, calm me down a little bit, take the edge off. If I could take the edge off during a question, that's going to give me a real good roundabout way to kind of help me calm, okay? Love it. Juliet said lavender or peppermint on a lava bracelet. Yeah, that's super, super great way to do it. Yeah, absolutely. Varuna said, are we able to flag the answers and come back at the end? Absolutely. I always recommend saving all your math questions to the end if you are a state that has math questions. We have some folks from California. Be jealous, be envious of them. They don't have any math. So if you're in a state that does have math, save it all towards the end. And also, if you're having a question that you're just not getting, I'd rather you skip it, flag it, save it to the end, than for you to actually have struggles with it, first and foremost. So what I like to do is I like to go over certain topics that I feel are super important that you'll see on the test, okay? The first one is fair housing. Fair housing. And I always go over this almost every single one, no matter what you guys want to go over. This is super big on the test, because so you need to get your fair housing laws down. Now, what I'm not going to be talking about is any state-specific laws, okay, because some of them are really super encompassing. Some of them are, laws that will cover many, many, many different things. So I'm going to be talking about our federal laws and our illegal discriminatory practices that we cannot be partaking in, okay? So that being said, okay, let's talk about the two federal laws, okay? So the first one that we have is the Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act of 1866, okay? And that covers race and color. Now, here's the thing. This is what I'll tell you. Some people, some of your teachers, some of the material that you read might not include color in regards to that law. I do, because some test writers that you'll see, they'll write color in there as well. However, the prevalent one is that of race, okay? So someone said, can we get a copy of this meeting? Absolutely. You're going to all be emailed a link once it is uploaded to my channel. It will be private for a certain period of time, and then you'll be able to, then other people will be able to see it. So you guys are getting the privilege of getting it first for about a month to a month and a half. Okay. So you will get a copy of this. All right. So, and great question. So the next one that I'm going to tell you is this. So Civil Rights Act of 1866, super big, is going to be no exceptions. Okay, no exceptions to this. So here's what I always say. This is what I refer to as the fair housing multiplied by zero question. So you know how, like, you ever get a math question and they go, so you're going to take 1, divide it by 14, then you're going to take that to the second power, and then you're going to multiply by 0. Then you sit there and go, the answer is 0. Yes, this is the multiplied by 0 answer. So whenever they say, can you discriminate based on race? The answer is no. The answer is no, the answer is no, the answer is no. Well, what if we could discriminate against race based on this thing? No. What if we, no, multiply by 0, it's 0. Okay, so understand that. If the question ever says, can you discriminate based on race? The answer is N-O. No exceptions, multiply by 0. Why? Stu said so. Okay, so race is never, never, ever, ever. And they'll ask you that 700 different ways. Okay, so that is me giving you like your first couple questions. Okay, that is me giving you at least one question. Okay, they will ask you, can you discriminate based on race? No, you can't. Nope, never, never, ever, ever. Next rule is going to be the Civil Rights Act of, no, not the Civil Rights, listen to me. Fair Housing Act of 1968, okay? So here's what this one covered. So this one covered that of race, color, religion, and national origin, okay? And now this one also had 2 amendments to it. In 74, they added gender, okay, or sex, or male, female, okay? And I make that distinction because, again, I know that sometimes with, you know, everything that's going on currently, politically, political correctness, that gender, that I need to make sure you understand gender is male, female in regards to how that law is written right now and interpreted right now in 2020, okay? In 2021, 2022, could that change? Yes. Could we be having a different discussion? Yes. But when I say gender in the 74 Amendment, I mean male, female, okay? That is what I mean in regards to the Fair Housing Act of 68, okay? Now, in 88, we added a whole bunch of things. We added familial status, okay? We also added that of mental and physical handicaps, okay? And they explicitly included AIDS victims. Now, a lot of people say, Stu, that seems kind of weird. In 2020, that seems kind of weird to include AIDS victims. And I always say you have to look at the contextual clues here. In 88, there was a lot of things going on. There was a lot of stuff happening, okay? And one of them was we were coming off of the AIDS epidemic, okay? We were coming off of the AIDS epidemic. So right now, there might be something, if they were writing a law similar to that now, they might include something like a, you know, a coronavirus victim, something like that, you know? So what happens is you're going to run into a situation where contextual clues matter. Contextual clues matter. So now, 88, they add familial status, mental and physical handicaps, okay? They add mental and physical handicaps. Now, my question to you, I want you guys to interact with me a little bit. Tell me what you think of this. When we have a alcoholic in treatment, are they a protected class? Is an alcoholic in treatment a protected class? We got no, yes, maybe 50-50. So alcoholic in treatment would be considered a protected class. So I'm going to put that right there. I'm going to give this a little check. Yes, they are considered a protected class under mental handicaps, okay? Under mental handicaps, okay? Oh, man, you guys are getting a little ahead of me. Look at you. So let's ask this. What about a controlled substance / drug abuser? So here's what I'm going to tell you guys, okay? In treatment, and I'll say in treatment, okay? So they're in a rehab facility. Would you consider them to be a protected class? Okay. So Claire just wrote in no. Someone else said yes. So here's what we're going to say. Alcoholic in treatment is a yes. Then we said a controlled substance or drug abuser in treatment is going to be a no, because a controlled substance or a drug abuser, those are considered to be illegal substances. So understand they could interchange on the test. They might come at it from a controlled substance standpoint. They might come at it from a drug abuser standpoint, stuff like that. So in this situation, you would not have, okay, them be a protected class under the mental and physical handicaps. Now, here's a question that you're going to get asked on the test. There's two questions. So I'm giving you the gift of this. You ready? They say, according to fair housing laws, and they might say federal, I'm not sure. So let's say federal fair housing laws, which is not a protected class. They'll say Arab, Jew, single mother, okay, and homosexual. So you will get this question. I promise you, cross my heart, hope to die, stick a poodle in my eye, okay? You will get this question, okay? And if you don't get this question, you are one of the few that did not get it. However, this one, it's isolating the federal law. So if it's isolating the federal law, and that's what you have to also come to terms with, okay? You have to come to terms with the fact that they're isolating that federal law, meaning, okay, that they are asking you based solely on that. So in certain states, homosexuals are protected classes, okay? Sexual orientation is a protected class. Gender identity is a protected class. All of those things would be a protected class, okay? However, according to fair housing laws, which of these is not a protected class? And it is not any one of these things, okay, is a homosexual. Single mother, because they have a child under the age of 18, that is the assumption. Then we have national origin and religion, okay, covered there. So the only one that is not a protected class is that of a homosexual. Now, the next question that you're going to get, and I do not know the wording of this question, so please bear with me. The question is going to be asked to you somewhat like this, okay? A real estate agent is advertising in or looking to advertise in a Russian newspaper, a Russian-speaking newspaper, okay? And what happens is this, okay? They are looking to advertise in a Russian-speaking newspaper, and they ask the question, is this legal? Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. Because I do not know the exact wording of the question, I will tell you this. Yeah, someone just told me, Presley said, yes, I had this question on Monday. The question, it goes along the lines is this legal? If the question is asking, is saying and suggesting that they are only advertising in the Russian newspaper, then it is illegal, okay? If they are advertising elsewhere and they're just doing that as ancillary advertising, it's fine. However, I think that the question is along the lines that they're only advertising in the Russian newspaper. So, Presley, if you did have that question in there, if you remember it off the top of your head, if it was the way that that I'm describing it, then that would be tremendously helpful. So, yes, it is illegal. So Sam asked the question, illegal? Yes, it is illegal to only advertise in the Russian newspaper, okay? So it's, and here's the thing, again, I don't have the exact wording of the question because I'm working on getting that, but I'm giving you what I have so that you guys know everything that kind of flows off the top of my head, right? So I give you as much as I can, and I give you the best insight. Yeah, so Presley said, I think it's what you're saying, where it was only in the Russian newspaper. And if that was the case, then that is definitely illegal. So I'm going to do a little erasy, okay? Do a little erasy. And then what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to talk about steering, okay? So what is steering? What is steering, guys? Who wants to answer that for me? So steering is channeling buyers to or away from an area, okay? So channeling is, steering is channeling buyers to or away from an area. So Claire asked the question, but you're allowed to advertise in other languages. It just also needs to be in English, right? So here's my take on that. And I've had a couple of conversations about this. As long as, okay, you have an English copy of the advertisement, okay, as long as there is, it does need to be in English, okay? Because here's the thing. You have to understand that the real estate commissions in whatever state you're in, or the Department of State, or whatever the governing body is, they need to be able to examine the advertisement and be able to understand it. So what happens is this. If it is written in a completely different language, okay, that is fine as long as there is an English copy somewhere, anywhere. Like if you're only advertising it in Swahili, no. Here's the thing. If you have contracts that are written in Swahili, as long as there's also English versions of it because they need to be inspected, that is the answer to that, you know? Because here's the thing, if a majority of the people only speak, you know, Swahili, then what happens is it's understandable to want to advertise in Swahili as well as English. However, there needs to be an English version, okay? Because again, these advertisements need to be inspected. The governing bodies need to be able to look at them and understand that you're not saying something fishy, okay, that you're abiding by all of the state advertising laws, stuff like that. So hope that answered the question for you, okay? And I see a thank you, so I know that I did. And that's the benefit of having me in this little small private event. You have the chance to ask the questions, you know, that you wouldn't be able to if you were just watching this on YouTube. So steering is channeling buyers to or away from an area, okay? Now, here's the other thing. The other type of illegal practice is going to be that of blockbusting. Tell me what another name for blockbusting is. What's another name for blockbusting, guys? Okay, has a couple names. Someone said panic peddling. Okay. Yeah, I love panic peddling. Yeah. Panic peddling, or also it could be referred to as panic selling. Okay. I think that's usually rarer than panic peddling. Okay. I usually see panic peddling more as a synonym for it. Okay. Or as my friend's daughter says, the cinnamon. So, yeah, panic peddling, panic selling, that is definitely what we're going to refer to blockbusting as. So here's what happens is this is inducing fear of a protected class moving in or out of an area, convincing a seller, a homeowner, to sell. Okay, so let's say that I was like, I'm originally from, I'll let you in on a little secret about me, because people, I like to let you get to know me a little bit too. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, okay? I'm a Brooklyn boy. I'm an Italian Brooklyn boy. I know, with a name like Stuart Jacobson, who would have thunk it, right? I have my father's name, my mother's, and I was raised by my mother's Italian Puerto Rican family. So I'm absolutely 100% American mutt. That's what I like to refer to myself as. However, I will tell you this: a lot of people were coming knocking on my house when I was in Brooklyn. I was one of the last homes on my block to sell that was still Italian owned. Everything turned to who was predominantly Asian, predominantly Russian, all moving into the area and coming in with loads of money. And they're like, yeah, we want to buy up your house. We want to buy up your house. We want to buy up your house. And I was one of the last ones to sell. And I finally did sell. But there was a lot of people who were trying to, a lot of real estate agents who were making. And here's the thing, too. This is what I'll tell you with panic peddling and steering, just to kind of give you a real-world example, okay? Because I know you guys like that, too. And that's why some of you guys asked me in the questionnaire, you were like, more real-world examples, please, because those help it stick in my brain. A lot of people were saying to me, Stu, you know, hey, we love you. You should be selling. You should be selling your home because you're the last of the Italians. And that was, and here's the thing with going back to what I was saying, any kind of discriminatory practice in real life, it's never going to be, like, no pun intended, black and white. Like, no one's going to sit there and be like, you know, the Jews are coming into town and you need to sell. And you'd be like, aha, that's panic peddling. Like, it's going to be a little more discreet. It's going to be a little more, like have undertones to it. It's going to be more inferred than anything else. So what happens is, like, I think that that's what happens. And that's where people kind of get tripped up, is that real world things. Like, I'll give you one quick story about steering. Okay. I had an agent who worked for me. Okay. So an agent who worked for me. And what happened was this: she was taking out a single mother and her younger child, and they were both African American, and they were in a predominantly Orthodox Jewish town. Okay, they were predominantly Orthodox Jewish, and what happened was this: the agent was asked by the little child, "Why do they keep two stoves?" He was like, "This is really weird," and he's like 7. So, like, if you've ever been around the 7-year-old, they have questions out the wazoo. So this is what she did in a very articulate way. She said, "Well, you know, this is the first home we're seeing, and just so you know, this family keeps kosher. So whenever you go into a home where they keep kosher, and we're going to see this a lot because we're going to be going into other Jewish homes, we're going to see 2 stoves in here. You know, this is a Jewish community, so we're going to see that a lot when we go and look at other homes. And this is what it means to keep kosher." And she went into this whole thing, and the kid really liked it. He really liked hearing about this and learning about this, just like, you know, any 7-year-old kid would like to learn about all these kinds of things. What do you guys think? Do you think that the real estate agent was cool with what she did? Or do you think that she might have said something incorrect or not really that great in that statement? I thought she was pretty articulate in what she said. But I want to ask you guys, I want to put it out there and see what you guys think. Sam said, sounds good. So, real world example, here's what I'm going to tell you. That was actually an illegal practice. That was steering. That was a HUD tester who was there. She mentioned Orthodox community. She mentioned the community being illegal. You know, so Sam asked why. When she mentioned that this was an Orthodox community, even though it might have been accurate, that is potentially steering and saying to someone, hey, I don't know if you belong here. Because again, I told you, it's usually not an overt statement that happens. Hence why when they're asking you questions on the test, they're going to be more nuanced, and they're going to be inferences that you have to, you know, take the right way. So someone asked, how would I recommend answering that question in real life? I simply would say, just like if a family had a Christmas tree, I'd be like, that's a Christmas tree. You know, this is what a Christmas tree is. There's 2 stoves here because they keep kosher. That fact. What's a Christmas tree? What's a menorah? It's not necessarily saying that the community is. It's a kid pointing to, you know, a cross and saying, yes, that's a cross. You know, that's what it is. Could that happen with school districts and what they think their child could be involved in? Yeah, there's a lot of different things too with school districts and things like that. I always say in a best practice thing, tread lightly with that. And also go with your brokerage's best practice, because they do have things in place that are going to be things that are, you know, hey, you shouldn't say this, you should say that. So that's kind of the real world implication. So let's keep moving and grooving so that we don't get into the thick of things too much, because this could be story time and we could be here forever. So redlining, okay? What's redlining? What does redlining have to do with? Kevin said loans. Is it just loans? Here's the thing. People always miss this up. They always mix this up. Oh, Claire, thank you so much. It's going to be lending and insuring. So here's what happens. This is what they do. They basically say, okay, they draw a red line, okay? They draw a red line around, oh no, I don't want to change that to red. They draw a red line around a certain area, okay? And what they do is this. They draw a red line and they say, hey, you cannot lend or insure. We will not lend or insure two people. Someone said, I hear the dogs. Yeah, my wife's probably coming home right about now. So the dogs are getting pretty excited. And what's funny is I was going to muffle my room and muffle my office. And someone said to me in one of the videos that I did, they said, Stu, your dogs are part of the family. So why, they're not super loud. And they're not going the whole entire time. It's just usually when my wife comes home or if they think they're getting food. So I'm a big pet lover. I'm an animal lover. So redlining is this. The lending or insuring, okay, denying it to someone who's in a certain area, who's in a certain geographic area. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Basically, the redlining, okay, they just draw a line around a map, okay? And then what they do is they say, hey, we're not going to lend or insure to people of a protected class in that area. So here's the thing you're going to hear, and I try to not get political. Here's why. I love every single one of you. I don't care who you pull the lever for in that election box or who you mail in your ballot for in the election. I know that you're doing that because you love me, I love you, and you just want to better us for us. So I do not get political. However, I like to talk about this because this does come up. This does come up during election time because they say the lasting effects of redlining. And what happened was this. Redlining was a practice that was done pre-civil rights movements, okay? So there were civil rights movements. Now it's not done. But then what happened was it was done prior to that, okay? So what happens is you will get situations where people will say these are the lasting effects of redlining, meaning that some people were pushed out into ghettos, or into impoverished areas, and that had effects on them because they weren't able to get loans or get insurance to have the goal of home ownership, okay, when it comes to the purchasing in that area. So that being said, that's redlining in a nutshell. So understand, and this is what I would take away from that. It is an illegal practice. It is not done nowadays, okay? However, excuse me. What happens is you have to understand that it is lending and insuring. That's where people usually go wrong with that, okay? So that being said, what I'm going to do is I saw a couple of you ask for contracts. So I am going to oblige. So, oh no, I can't do the red with the typing with the red is not good. So we're going to type with this one. So now contracts, okay? And here's what I'm going to tell you guys. I know that I'm moving on to another subject, but if you do have questions that I wasn't able to get answered for you, again, we have a slow moving chat because I have a controlled number of you guys. So please put it in the chat box and let me know if you do have a question or a concern about something that we might have just gone over, because I don't have a problem going back and clarifying anything, okay? So with contracts, let's talk about this, okay? Contracts are usually either unilateral, okay, or bilateral. So what do I mean by unilateral and bilateral? What do I mean by unilateral and bilateral? Can you guys tell me, give me a hint? Tell me what you think unilateral and bilateral mean. So someone said uni is 2. Okay, let's talk about this. You ready? Unilateral contract. These are usually our option contracts, okay? This is bound to one party, okay? So one party is basically saying, hey, they're obligated to act. They're bound to that deal, okay? So, you ready? Okay, so someone said unilateral is a lost dog reward. Yeah, let's say, God forbid, my dogs got out, okay? And I started stapling lost dog posters, reward $5,000 for bringing home the dogs, okay? What would happen is this. The situation would be this. You could go look for Molly and Rosie, okay? Those are my 2 dogs. You could go look for Molly and Rosie, okay? Or you could go walk away. Also, typically in real estate, so like the ones that you guys usually see in real estate are the options to purchase, okay? And someone said, why did I answer that wrong? I went over that today. So let me kind of take a little sidestep right now and talk to you about something that is near and dear to my heart and why people read things and they're like, oh my God, I studied this. Oh my God, I studied this about 9 times. I read this about 10 times. I watched a webinar. I did all this on this topic, but I somehow got the question wrong. And here's why. And I need to talk to you about this because I talk about this in my private lessons, and I talk about this when I'm teaching in-person classes, but I need to talk to you about your mind trolls, okay? And you're probably sitting there going, Stu, what is a mind troll? Well, let me tell you what happens is in your head, you have little tiny trolls that file away all the information, okay? And they're devious little ones. They're devious little trolls. So listen to what they do. If you say to them, you consume something, and you say, this is super important, we want to keep this, they're going to ask you a question. They're going to say, do we need to explain this to someone later on? And you go, no, but I need it for a test. So like, that's super important. So if you say to your brain filing cabinet trolls that you don't need to explain it to someone, what they do is this. They sit there and go, mwah, ha, 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 ha. And they will put the file away in the most misshapen way that you possibly could imagine. And they'll just jam it into the filing cabinet. And there'll be papers hanging out, and it will look like some of your kids' desks at school, some of their rooms, if you have children, or the way that my dog, as soon as they get a toy or 10 toys, they just want to pull everything out, okay, if you don't have children. So yes, any which way that you could imagine, that's what your little brain trolls will do. They'll just shove it in there. So then here's what happens when you try to unpack that. I go and I test some people in my private lessons, and I say, okay, so tell me what joint tenancy is. And this is what happens is they tap the little mind troll on the shoulder. They go, hey, where's the file on joint tenancy? And then the mind troll goes over and they whisper in their ear, they go, you didn't tell us that we had to explain this. So they open it up and they go like this. All of a sudden you're looking at it and you're going, oh dear God. And this is what people usually do. They say, I would know it if I saw it in question. And the mind trolls are going, good, yes. I think we can make sense out of it in a question. And then you would have this. You have a situation where you're just not unpacking it properly. So in order to really kind of get yourself situated with how to study and how to really prepare for the test, one of the things that I tell you guys all the time is pretend like you're explaining it to someone, like how I got better at learning this stuff, okay? This is what I'll tell you. When you sit there and you try to explain something to someone, picture that when you're studying, you're not, so after you watch a webinar, after you read something, picture that you're having coffee with your best friend and they say to you, hey, could you explain to me joint tenancy? So the way that you would explain it to them is a way that you're now going to file it away in your brain so that when you see it on a test, you're going to have that as the lasting impression of what that is, okay? So that was kind of like my little sidetrack, okay, to help you understand why you need to start explaining it and say these words out loud, okay? So that's a big key to understanding things. But we want to figure out bilateral, right? So an option is bound to one party, right? It's bound to one party, okay? The bilateral, okay, is going to be, okay, a promise for a promise. And here's what I'll tell you. Option contract, so in real estate, it's usually an option to purchase, right? So it's usually the option to purchase. So let's say I say to, I'll say to Kevin, because he's the most recent one in the chat, I say, Kevin, I'm going to give you the option to purchase my home or not. Kevin has the right to exercise that option, right? And when they exercise the option, we are now bound to, he is now going to be entering into a bilateral contract with me because he's going to be paying for my home. I'm going to be selling him my home. Okay, so that's a bilateral. Promise for a promise. Okay, unilateral is only one party is bound to it. Okay, does that make sense, guys? Just let me know. Give me a thumbs up in the chat box if that cleared it up for you as far as unilateral and bilateral. Okay. Awesome. Thumbs up, thumbs up. Next one is going to be executory or executed, okay? Or executed. So executory is this, okay? Executory is that there's still things that need to be fulfilled. Still things that need to be done, okay? in an executed contract, okay, that means that all promises have been fulfilled. Okay, so situation here is this. Okay, executory, there are still things that need to be done. So if I'm in the middle of, if I'm in escrow, okay, if I'm in escrow and when I'm in escrow, I haven't closed yet on my house, okay, then that means that my contract is executory. It's probably going to be a bilateral promise for a promise, okay, and executory. Now, does it need to say fully executed or just executed? So executed and fully executed in my mind that's semantics. Executed is executed. Executed means that all promises have been fulfilled, okay? So someone asked, can you explain an option? So I'm going to go over that again just real quick. An option, typically in real estate, is an option to purchase, right? It's a unilateral contract. So I was giving the example earlier. If I give the option to Kevin, right? If I give an option to Kevin to purchase my house, you know, what happens is Kevin has the right to buy my house or not, okay? So what happens is typically when we see option contracts is when they're combined with a lease. And we say a lease with an option to buy. So what happens is, here's the thing, people think that that's one foul swoop. A lease is a bilateral agreement where one person promises to give the right to possess and use, the other one agrees to pay, okay? That's a lease. So what happens is a lease with an option to purchase means that basically the lessee is getting an option to purchase my home. They can act on it or they could not, right? It is their choice. The optionor, the one who is giving it, because remember, we also want to say the OR gives and the EE receives, okay? The optionor, who's also the landlord, they basically are saying, hey, you have the option. The optionee, who is also the lessee, okay, they get the right to say, yeah, I want to purchase it. No, I don't, okay? So that is an option, and I'm glad that you got it, Angela. Thank you so much for that, okay? So again, executory or executed. Executory, still stuff that needs to be done. Executed, all promises have been fulfilled. So the next thing that a contract could be is going to be implied or expressed, or sometimes they refer to it as just as express. So let me ask you this. What is an implied contract? That's the one that most people usually get tripped up on. So what do you guys think an implied contract is? Someone said when you go out to eat. I think that's my favorite example of this. So a lot of people, so I also like Presley gave a great answer. It's based on actions, right? Okay. So a lot of people always say, yeah, when you go to a restaurant, right? So I sit down at a bougie restaurant and I say, I like to order the 16-ounce filet mignon. There's an implication that not only am I going to eat it, not only am I going to love it, I'm also going to pay for it at the end, right? So those are my actions. I'm taking actions to basically help understand what is going to happen. So this is going to be actions create a contract, okay? So actions create a contract. There's no words need to be spoken, okay? I could simply just point to the filet mignon and be like, that's it. That's what I want. Express contracts. So Angela wrote, that would not be a handshake, would it? It depends on what it is. I mean, it depends on what it is. Here's the thing. As long as it doesn't meet the qualifications of the next type of contract, then it's probably going to be more of an implied contract. So the express contract, the terms are clearly understood, okay? So expressed or declared orally or in writing, okay? So here's the thing. So Jennifer, you typed in, but need to be written within 5 days, correct? Give me more clarification on that, what you're talking about. Are you talking about express or implied? and what type of contract are you talking about? Because that's kind of super specific, and I want to make sure that I answer the question to the best of my ability, because other people might have that. But an express contract for implied consent, no. So here's the thing. So if we're talking about an implied contract, like going out to eat, that's an implied contract. And at no point, so like, listen, my meal's through my digestive system within 5 days. So we don't need to put it in writing. So no, implied contracts are going to be implied through or understood and created through actions. For real estate contracts can never be implied. Every real estate contract needs to be expressed and in writing, okay? So that is because of statute of frauds, okay? So a real estate contract for sale, I should say, okay? There are some things that you could have in a real estate contract, like an open listing, which could be oral, but anything for exclusivity, okay? Anything for exclusivity, okay? Or sale or lease that is that is more than a year has to be in writing because of statute of frauds. You could have an oral lease for less than a year, okay? Anything for sale, lease more than a year, okay? Those all need to be in writing. And here's the thing, they're express contracts where the terms are clearly defined. So for those of you who have interacted with me in some manner, shape, or form, you know that I have a very, very, very thorough fountain pen collection. So if I said to someone, if someone saw my collection and said, Stu, we'd love to have one of your fountain pens, I'd be like, okay, $400 for that fountain pen, okay? And then they're like, okay, yeah, no, that's a good deal, that's a good deal. And that's the truth. Some of my pens are that crazy. I have crazy pens like that. So that would be an express contract, okay, where the terms are clearly defined. It does not necessarily have to be in writing unless there is a law in place that says that it needs to be in writing, right? Because the law that we have, which is the statute of fraud, says that real estate sales contracts need to be expressed and in writing, okay? That's why we have to put them in writing. So does that make sense, guys? So Claire asked, they changed that to less than 3 years, not less than 1 year. I saw that on one of the questions in Prep Agent. So here's what I will tell you. It's less than 1 year. It's been that way since I started teaching 12 years ago. So that is the answer there. And here's the thing, I would always be, I could be proven wrong. However, that I know for a fact is the answer there. So that I'm not even like doubtful at all about that. So the other thing that I want to talk about is going to be, and someone said, will you please go over Tila, HUD, equal credit? So I'll definitely go over Tila, Respa, and HUD documents. I'll definitely go over that because I think that we're going to go into financing next after contracts, because financing was probably the third most requested topic. So I'm going to be going into financing. So that's how we're going to go next. All right. So I'm going to get into that. Let's continue though on contracts, because there's definitely more that we need to go over in contracts, okay? And I'm going to leave this stuff up here, and keep in mind, we are recording this, and this is going to be available to you guys, so probably by the end of the day tomorrow, this will be up, and you guys will be getting links to everything, okay? So, that being said, let's talk about what the requirements for a legal valid contract are. Legal valid contract. Okay. And here's what a legal valid contract is. I use the acronym CLOCK without a K. CLOCK without a K. Okay. Okay. That's competent parties. Okay. Legal object. Offer and acceptance. And consideration. Okay. Now here's the thing. Consideration could be that of good or valuable consideration, meaning that it could be worth money, okay? And it could be, love and affection, okay? Because we're just talking about a contract right now. We're not necessarily talking about any particular type of contract. So let's go through what competent parties mean. Competent parties means that they have to legally be able to sign a contract, okay? They have to legally be able to sign a contract. If they are not legally able to sign a contract, you do not have competent parties. And typically that does not meet the legal object either. And that's something that people get confused with, because they say, here's the situations, and we're going to get into void, voidable, unenforceable. We're going to go over that. I'm going to give you my twist on it and what I think everything is. And again, it might cut against the grain as far as what your teachers might have taught you, what you might have learned, all that kind of stuff. But I have a pretty simple way of understanding it from my standpoint. And what I'm going to tell you is this: you have to understand it in a way that you could apply it to different scenarios. Okay. So that's the hardest thing, because everything's going to be scenario based. So at no point are you ever going to have a question on the test that says, what do you need to have a legally valid contract? And they'll just list things and you'll be like, oh my God, the acronym clock is helping me now. Thank you, Stu. No, it's going to be like, they're going to say, we have this contract over here. And what is this one? Okay. So someone said, Presley said, what about fair housing and mentally incompetent? Would that have any effect on the validity of a contract? Is that related at all? Yes. So here's what I'm going to tell you, Presley, 100%. So if they're legally incompetent, there is never a time at which they would not be legally competent that you could hold their feet to a contract. So that would be a void contract, actually, because they're never going to legally be able to. However, let me kind of contrast that, okay, because we're talking about competent parties, legality of it, and we're going a little bit into the void voidable thing, okay? I'll go more in depth in a little bit once we get off of the legal, the components of a legally valid contract, okay? So what happens is this: let's say I'm inebriated, though. Let's say I'm inebriated. I'm at a bar and I'm looking at my friend and he goes, that's a really awesome pen. I'm like, dude, it's a $400 pen. You can't afford that. He goes, well, I wanted to start a pen collection. And, you know, after having 5 Heinekens, I think that that's the perfect pen for me. So Stu, I want to buy that expensive pen from you. And I go, okay. And then let's say he comes to it. And then next day I go knock on his door and I go, hey, JJ, do you want to still buy my expensive pen? He's like wiping the sand out of the corner of his eyes, and he's like, I was drunk last night. I'd be like, yeah, I know. You still want to buy it? He goes, yeah, this is something I need to do with my life. I see how successful you are, and I think it's because of the pens. And I'd be like, okay, let's do it. So what happens is he has now basically come out of a state of inebriation, okay, where he could have probably made the contract void, okay, because it was voidable on his part because there was some sort of duress or inebriation at the time at which the contract was agreed upon, where there was offer and acceptance. But when you have someone who is deemed legally incompetent, then no, the contract can't stand, okay? Legality of the object. Now, here's what I'll tell you about legality of the object, okay? Legality of the object means that you will have, okay, and I'm glad that that helped you, because I see you putting thank you in there, and I love seeing that, because if you guys ask me a question, I want to know that I'm hitting on all the right notes, because again, although I'm putting this out there for others to view later on down the road, keep in mind that this is your private time with me, so that's why I need to make sure that you guys are getting it, and it's in a way that you guys can understand, okay? So that's why I say put your information in the chat box if you have questions, okay? Legal object. So what does that mean? That means that you have a situation where Angela said it's like selling a house for drugs. So that's an illegal component, right? We have the actual object of the contract. We have that as being legal. So selling a house, perfectly fine. Do it all the time, okay? Selling a house for 5 pounds of heroin? No, can't do that. Can't do that, okay? So also what happens too is this. If we're talking about the legality of the object, if I said to you, hey, I got 5 pounds of heroin, could you sell this for me? That is an illegal object right there, okay? So if there's an illegal component, an illegal object in the contract, it is void, could never take place, okay? And that's different from voidable. Voidable basically means, yeah, good contract, A-okay. You know, my friend JJ buying my fancy fountain pen. Yeah, totally. Like, he could do that. There's nothing illegal about that. Okay. Someone wants to buy one of my guitars. Yeah, totally. Like, the guitars are cool. Like, money is cool. That is a perfectly fine thing. Also, there has to be offer and acceptance. So that's another component, okay? And also, we talk about offer and acceptance, and we talk about that being a meeting of the minds, okay? So when I'm talking about offer and acceptance, it's different than, because in deeds, we need delivery and acceptance, okay? Which is different. Delivery and acceptance is basically me going, okay, here's the deed. Open your hands up. Do you want this? You want this? And it is delivered and accepted. There you go, and you walk away. Okay? That is delivery and acceptance. There doesn't need to be a meeting of the minds, okay? Because there are no terms to really agree on, okay? It's either you accept transfer or you do not accept transfer, okay? With offer and acceptance, there needs to be a meeting of the minds. And another word that you're going to probably see on your test is going to be that of procuring cause, okay? Procuring cause is basically when you are bringing about an unbroken chain of events. This is my take on it. When you are bringing about an unbroken chain of events that leads to the meeting of the minds, whatever that is. That could be when they sign the contract. That could be when they see the home and they go, oh my God, this has to be the one for me. Okay. Or if you're FaceTiming with them, you know, and they're like, oh, this is the home, you know, give them whatever they want. Give the seller all the money. Okay. Then, so that's offer and acceptance. That's meeting of the minds. That's kind of tying it into procuring cause. Then we have consideration. Consideration could be good or valuable, I told you, for contracts. So you could have valuable consideration as long as it has value, okay? And here's the thing. People always get confused with this, and they always say, so anything of value? Yeah, and even if you think it's stupid, okay? Like if I want to sell you my house for an El Camino, like you might sit there and go, Stu, that don't make sense. El Caminos are ugly. They're beautiful. You're wrong. But if I wanted to do that, again, that is the situation there. I could do that, okay? And that's another like test-taking tip that I want you to kind of take with you is this. Don't tie the logic of the question too heavily to, well, who would do that? Like, that's what a lot of my students do. They go, that doesn't make sense. Why would you sell a home and only can make that much commission? Like, that doesn't make sense. But that isn't what you're trying to do. So Mary Lee said, can you repeat the definition of procuring cause? Absolutely. It is a person, so it's typically the agent, right, that has brought about an unbroken chain of events that has led to a meeting of the minds, okay, which is the offer and acceptance, okay? It is hard to define in a actual scenario what the procuring cause might be. So that's why they have people who they have realtor boards that would decide in a real life example. They would say, so bring about all of the evidence and say, you know, here's what the situation is. And this is why I think that I would be the procuring cause. Okay. And then there's a cat fight at the realtor board, and the realtor board, the grievance committees. That's oh man, if you get an opportunity to in your real estate career, serve on a grievance committee. That is, and if anyone's listening to this that's on a grievances committee later on a recording somewhere, that is a fun time. That is just a fun time. And yeah, a lot of funny stories. I digress though. So that is the legal aspects of a contract. Okay. And I've left this stuff up there for a while, so I'm going to actually start erasing some things so that we can talk about void, voidable, unenforceable, stuff like that. So can you review debits and credits? I'll tell you what I'll do is, I think that might be one of the things I wrap up on, Jennifer, where I'll go into debits and credits. Remind me, because again, I just told you kind of where my map is going. I saw the questions for finance come up, so I want to go and do that next, okay? And we're going to go over Regulation Z, Tila, Respa. We're going to do that. And there is. And here's the thing, keep in mind too, I know a couple of you guys wrote that you wanted math included. And I put a ton of math videos out there. So I literally do at least 1 to 2 math questions a week. So there's ample math questions that I have that you could watch and view. And if you're a prep agent member, then what happens is this. If you're a prep agent member, I do a lot of math webinars. Okay, so you can watch recordings of me. and you could watch me doing all the math questions. So sign up. Will I touch on valuation or appraisal? If I have time, yeah, I'll do valuation with the evaluation and appraisal. So that'll be kind of the roadmap today. I'll go finance, I'll go into debits and credits, and then we'll end with valuation or appraisal. Okay, so let's talk about voidable. Let's also talk about unenforceable and valid. Okay, and valid. Okay, so valid, all systems go. Right, that's also an enforceable contract. Yep, you could sue in a court of law. Okay, all that kind of stuff. Void, illegal component. Okay, so there's an illegal component of some sort. The other thing that we have is voidable. Okay, means that one party was it's usually for duress, being drunk. Okay, contracts with minors. Okay, now some of you might say, but Stu, we can't enter into contracts with minors in our state. If your state is, so here's what I stand by. I always say this: if it is illegal for you to enter into a contract with a minor, then you have an illegal component there. Okay, does that make sense, guys? Give me a thumbs up if that makes sense to you. Yeah, so that's what I usually say with voidable. But if it is legal for you to get into a contract with a minor, okay, it would be voidable on the part of the minor. Unenforceable. Man, people always get this one confused. This is missing one of the components. Okay. Okay. It's missing something. And it's said to basically be enforceable amongst the parties. But it can't be enforced in a court of law. So let me give you something that would be totally okay amongst individuals, but not okay in a court of law. And I think this is like my favorite one, is an oral contract for the purchase of a home. Hits everything, seems valid, but because of the statute of frauds, it needs to be in writing. So if it's oral, there's nothing illegal about it. There's no incompetent parties, illegal components. There's nothing there, but okay, whatchamacallit. But the situation is this, okay? The situation is that the courts can't enforce that contract because it's not in writing and wouldn't meet the statute of frauds. However, there's nothing illegal about the contract, right? It's said to be binding amongst the parties. So question came in. I had a question on my test. So there's two questions that just popped up. So Claire wrote, so unenforceable is only enforceable in court. No, unenforceable is not enforceable in court. Okay, meaning, like I said, the example I gave you, oral contract to purchase a home. That means that, hey, there's nothing illegal about it, but because it's not in writing and the statute of fraud says it needs to be in writing, the court system cannot enforce it. So it is said to be unenforceable, okay? It is said to be unenforceable, okay? So I'm glad you got that one. Next question that came in was, I had a question on my test, and it said that talked about a contract with a minor, but the closing is 15 days after his 18th birthday. So here's what I would say. It is voidable on the part of the minor, okay? It is voidable on the part of the minor, okay? Because can an 18-year-old purchase a property? Yes. Okay. But I say that it's voidable on the part of the minor. Okay. So that's what I would say there. If that was the question, if posed just the way you worded it, I would say that if that's the question you got on your test, I would say voidable. So Claire wrote in, he has to be 18 from the beginning. In regards to, as long as it is legal for him to enter into that contract, okay, it's fine, because what it is it's a promise for a promise. And if he's saying, I promise to fulfill this and execute it after said time when I'm going to be an adult, it's voidable up until the point that he's an adult. Okay, that's what I would say. That's my take on it. And again, You could probably ask 100 different real estate instructors and you might get 100 different answers. That's my take on it. That's my interpretation of it. That's how I would feel about it. That's how I would interpret it if I was a test writer, okay? So I hope that helped you out. So those are the void, voidable, unenforceable, and valid. So let me ask you before I move away from that, are there any questions on void, voidable, unenforceable, valid, stuff like that? If there are any questions on this stuff that I have up on my screen. Nope, nope, nope. Keep going. All right, so let's do that. So, awesome. I'm glad that helped. I'm glad that helped, guys. So let's talk about finance, okay? And I am the mortgage guru, okay? So Lisa wrote in there, 17-year-old buys a house and he's married. All good because he's married. He's emancipated. That means that he's going to be considered an adult. You are married, you are considered an adult. That's it, done. You're not, like, you are your own individual. So 17 and married, they are, all systems go. It's not voidable. They are not considered a minor. They are considered a legal adult, okay? Unless there is a state-specific nuance that I am not taking into consideration. So if you guys say to me, but Stu, there is the, I'm saying a 17-year-old who is emancipated and married, okay, is considered a legal adult, okay, in a court of law, okay, in a court of law. So finance, we're going to talk about mortgages, okay? We're going to talk about mortgages. What we're going to do is talk about who gives a mortgage, what is a mortgage, why is a mortgage, what's a mortgage, how's a mortgage, you know, who did that, ran, came back again. So what I like to do in the mortgages section is I like to draw. I am a drawing fan. Everyone loves my drawings and everyone knows it. So you ready for this? Here is Stu, okay? Now, Stu has $100,000 in his pocket, okay? I have $100,000 in my pocket. Now, I have Stu the stick man. Yeah, stick man Stu. And you know what, Neil? Then we're going to have Neil. I'm going to make you with a smiley face, though, no hair. Okay, so now we have Neil. Neil comes by and he goes like this. He goes, Stu, what's that you got there? And I'd be like, oh, that's $100,000. That's my money. Okay. I like it. It's mine. And I don't know why you're asking about that. Okay. So I give that little meh face. Like, why I have my money, Neil? Okay. And then Neil says, well, there's this little house over here. Okay. It's a little tiny house. Okay. And I really like that house. Like, really like that house. Stu, could you give me that $100,000? And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. That's not really kind of, I like my $100,000. See, that makes me smile. Okay. And then you're like, okay, wait. Here's what we're going to do. Okay. And I'm like, I'm listening. You're like, Stu, have you ever heard of this thing called interest? And I say, Neil, who you now are piquing my interest. What is this interest thing that you're explaining to me? You say, and Neil then paints this little story. And he goes, well, what happens is you give me the 100,000. And then what happens is as I, and I'm going to use that to buy my little house over here because that makes me happy. Okay. And what's going to happen is this, I'm going to pay you, Stu, rent on money. So I'm going, this is getting interesting. Proceed, Neil. Proceed with your explanation. So you say, okay, Stu, we're going to pay you rent on your money for you allowing me to use it. So I'm going to pay you back with interest. So you're going to have more money than when you started with. And I go, oh, okay, I'm getting this whole interest thing. I love it. So yeah, let's do this. And then I start realizing something. I'm like, wait a second, Neil. Like, all right, now I'm giving you my $100,000. That makes me happy. And you're giving me this interest. You're paying me back. How do I know you're going to pay me back? So then Neil says, okay, Stu, watch. I'm going to give you this new thing called a promissory note, okay? Or let's just abbreviate it note, okay? So I'm going to give you the note. And I say, Neil, what's this note thing? What is this note that we have? And Neil kind of explains it to me. He goes, Stu, what this note is it's an IOU. I'd be like, oh. I was like, that's kind of like when my wife wants to cheap out on like Valentine's Day gifts and she gives me love coupons. Like, oh, here, I could trade this in for a back massage. And Neil's like, totally, yes, absolutely, it's an IOU, okay? So, yes, that is exactly it, you know? And I'm like, I got it, I understand it. So here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna give you money. You're gonna pay me back over time with this thing called interest, which is rent on money. And now I'm holding this IOU. Wait a second. These are like the love coupons. And I know that my wife always forgets about the love coupons, or I can't really cash them in. So, yeah, this whole note thing, I'm not really happy about that. Okay. So Neil goes, I totally understand that you're not too happy about it. And I say to him, I say, look, Neil, the situation is this. I don't know if you're going to pay me back because all I have is this basic love coupon IOU thing note that you like to refer to it as. And I don't know you that well. So could you give me a little more security? Could you secure the note for me? And then Neil says, yeah, you see this little house over here that I'm buying that makes me really happy? Well, I'm going to give you, Stu, the mortgage. And I say, oh my gosh, Neil, like Monopoly? And you go, yeah, like Monopoly. But what the mortgage is basically the pledge of real property. So Stu, you could put a lien on my property because you hold the mortgage and the note. The mortgage is what allows you to put the lien on the property, meaning that if I don't pay you according to the note, and I go, the love coupons, and you go, yes, the love coupons, Stu, okay? If I don't pay you back in accordance with the IOU, okay, with interest, which is the rent on money, and I go, yeah, I remember that. That made me happy. You go, yeah, absolutely. What happens is this. You could foreclose on my home. So the mortgage is the pledge of real property for repayment of the loan. So what happens is, and that secures the note. Guys, isn't that a great way to explain mortgages? So here's what people always say. They go, the money is the mortgage. And people always say this. They're like, and I tell them, no, the money is not the mortgage. The money is the pledge of real property in repayment of the loan. The loan is the money. So people always use the slang, hey, I'm going to the bank to get a mortgage. No, you're going to the bank to get money, okay? So that is basically like a 5-minute version of what a mortgage transaction actually looks like, okay? So, and also too, I hope you had a little fun with that because I always love explaining this. So someone said, Angela said, that's a voluntary lien, right? So what happens is Neil totally didn't have to mortgage the property, right? But because he had to secure the note, because remember we said, you know, I was like, remember the face that I made when I had to secure, when I was like this note thing, that's kind of like the love coupon. That's kind of like how the bank feels when you give them a note. They're like, meh, like I don't really like this IOU thing. Like that's kind of, so the bank goes, we need something else more secure because what if you just stop paying us? Or like, what if we just get into an argument and I slam the give me a back massage on the counter? Okay, I'm like, do you remember this coupon? Yeah, I'm not cashing it in. The IOU is only as good as, you know, basically securing it. So here's the thing. The mortgage is what secures the note. It's what secures the IOU, okay? Because the IOU by itself really doesn't stand, okay? It's just evidence of debt. It's basically just exactly that. It's an IOU. Okay, so that's, yeah, I mean, and that's how I like explaining it. Also, when you mortgage real property, they refer to that as hypothecation. Okay, hypothecation. So people always say to me, they always forget what that word is. When you mortgage a property and you give the mortgage to the bank. So here's the thing. And people always get this confused. Remember I told you OR gives, EE receives? The mortgage or is the borrower. Okay, because you see the mortgage is the pledge of the real property and repayment of the loan. Okay. The mortgage E is, can I sing Joe's song? No, I cannot sing Joe's song. is the lender. Okay, the OR gives E, he receives. Someday I'm going to figure out Joe's little OREE song. For those of you who remember that, know it. You know, that is definitely something that sticks in your head, right? You know, and I hope that for mortgages, my little story with the love notes kind of sits in your head too. And that's the thing. I like to give you guys real life examples so that you know what everything is. So earlier you guys said, hey, is this a voluntary lien? Yes, because what happens is this: taxes, judgments, those are involuntary liens. No one ever says this. No one ever says, you know, I need more of those taxes, please. Okay. Think of taxes as the string beans on the plate. And don't tell me that you love string beans, because no one really likes string beans. Okay. There's no one that really likes them. There's people who tolerate them, but string beans are, they're one of the vegetables. Okay. Ice cream versus string beans, ice cream every day. So hypothecation. Okay. So Claire asked this. Claire asked, Stu, could you explain hypothecation again? So yeah, here's what I'm going to tell you. Hypothecation is basically the process of pledging real property as collateral for repayment of a loan. So when you give the mortgage, so when Neil gave me the mortgage, okay, and said, hey, Stu, the mortgage is going to allow you to put the lien on my home, right? They're going to allow you to put that encumbrance on the home. Then what happens is this. That process is hypothecation, okay? Yes, so when I hypothecate something, I'm basically pledging it as repayment for the loan. Hypothecation is pledge of something for repayment of a loan. So basically they're saying to me, hey, this is collateral for the note, right? It secures the note. It makes the note have a little bit of more oomph, right? Because remember I told you, I said, the note is the love coupons for the back massage that you can never cash in. Those little crumbly things that you get on Valentine's Day that you can't cash in. So that is the note, okay? That is what the note is, okay? And the mortgage makes it a little more secure. So I'm going to do a little erasey, okay? And we're going to talk about the primary markets, and we're going to talk about the secondary markets, okay? So the primary financing markets and the secondary financing markets. Well, that's not staying there, neither is that. So we erase everything. So who can tell me, while I'm doing erasey, what the primary financing markets are and what that secondary financing market is? What are we talking about here? Stu, what are we talking about? Who remembers? Who knows what those are? We have the primary market and we have the secondary market. So we have the primary market. We also have the secondary market. Is it residential versus commercial loans? No. Definitely not. Definitely not. Let's talk about what the second or the primary market is. Someone says I can't spell it. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, right? So let's talk about the primary market. Okay, the primary market is this. That is any kind of lending institution, okay? So that's your banks, lenders, credit unions, okay? Places that you're going to get money from, okay? Then the secondary market is the place where basically these mortgages and notes are going to be sold. So watch this. Let me give you another real world example, because like I said, you guys overwhelmingly wanted real world examples. So let me give you another one. You ready? So we're going to go back to Stu's drawings, because everyone loves Stu's drawings. So watch this. Here, we're going to go to my favorite place in the world. This is the candy store, okay? Yes, I love candy. For those of you who don't know, who haven't been in any of my webinars, I have a sweet tooth that could rival, oh man, if you have a child under the age of 10, okay? If you have a child under the age of 10, I have them beat, okay? So here we go. Candy store owner. They have all this candy, rows and shelves and all this stuff of candy. So here's what happens, okay? What happens is when you see a Stu come in And I'm like, oh my gosh, candy. Okay. I'm literally throwing money at them. Okay. Disney World is one of my favorite places, but I'm usually at a candy store in Disney. Okay. Long story short is I eat all the snacks. Hashtag every snack. So I'm literally throwing money at the candy store owner. Okay. And I'm literally taking all the candy. So here's what happens. People understand the retail process. Now, when the candy store owner is just left with no candy and only money, he then goes to the Willy Wonka factory and goes, hey, Wonka, I need more of this candy stuff, okay? Because I have money and I need to still sell it because I have a candy store, okay? Everyone understands that whole process, okay? So we just have to relate that to the secondary market and what is done with banks and lending institutions. So let's change this around a little bit, okay? You ready? When we say, let's say we call this a bank right now, okay? And let's say we call this a bank, okay? And when we call this a bank, okay, what happens is this. Money is going to the consumer, because money is the product, okay? So when we have no more money, what we're left with is the bank having mortgages and notes, okay? So they're left with mortgages and notes, okay? So what happens is in order to get more money, they go to the secondary market. That's the Willy Wonka factory, okay? That's the Willy Wonka factory. They go there and they say, hey, we have these mortgages and notes. Could we have more of that money? And they're like, sure, we'll buy them off of you, because what happens is this. Remember I was telling you back with the example that I was using with Neil, that we had interest that was going to be paid off over a period of time. So at the end of it, I would have more. So the bank would be really, really happy to keep doing that and make money over time. But what happens is you have to realize they're like a retail location, okay? They're like a retail location. So what happens is if they do not line the shelves with more money, then they cannot lend it. So it's like, why have the bank? So Sam asked, is the secondary market only between lenders and investors? So what happens is this. It's usually the secondary market only packages and warehouses mortgages. So they hold them for, to service, to basically, get the money over time with the interest, right? So that is the situation with the secondary market. So there are investors on that. So like if you wanted to invest in one of the entities on that secondary market, you can. You could, like if you had money and you wanted to invest in it, you're like, I would love to invest in mortgages and notes. Then what happens is you would invest in one of those secondary institutions on the secondary market, okay? Does that clear it up for you? Does that make sense? So what happens is this. They're going to sell the loan out to the secondary market for probably more than what they lent out. So if they lent out $100,000 loan, maybe they're selling it for $113,000, $115,000, because over time, over 30 years, holding that mortgage is going to be even more than just that. So what happens is the bank makes a little bit of money, okay? They're happy, okay? And then they have more money to put in the candy store, the bank, okay? Does that make sense? It should work out for us, right? Okay. So now we have to identify who's on that secondary market, right? We have to identify who's on that secondary market. So let's talk about our players on the secondary market. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about Respa, Tila, Trid, all the evil words that confuse us. So let's first talk about Fannie Mae. Okay, and here's the thing: they're going to probably refer to it as Fannie Mae, and not by its longer name. So I'm going to refer to it as Fannie Mae. Okay, Fannie Mae is the largest purchaser of mortgages and notes on the secondary market. Okay, meaning that they are absolutely 1,000, 1 million, 1 quadrillion%. Okay. The biggest entity on there. They're probably purchasing 1 out of every 10 loans, okay? 1 out of every 10 mortgages. So that is absolutely an astronomical number, okay? Like it might not seem a lot. You're like, That was only 10%. Dude, that's 10% of everything, like all the things, okay? So yes, they purchase FHA and VA loans, okay? And for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into FHA or VA today because I have a couple videos on my channel where you could actually go and view that. So I'm going to direct you to those, and that's in the quick daily tips kind of thing. So, and I think I go through a really nice version of that. So I want to make sure I hit on all the things that you guys are requesting. So you did want Respa, Tila, and appraisals and valuations. So I want to go into that, okay? So Fannie Mae is the largest purchaser on the secondary market, okay? They purchase everything. Now, they set limits. They set purchase limits for every single county in the country. Every single county in the country, okay? So what happens is this: if you are taking out a loan that is above the purchase limits, okay, if it is above the purchase limits of Fannie Mae, so if your loan is higher than the purchase limits of Fannie Mae, they refer to that as a jumbo or non-conforming loan, okay? That's how massive Fannie Mae is. Also, during the pandemic, during lockdown, they tightened the belt on a lot of their guidelines as far as how they were lending money out. And almost every lender in the country shifted to those guidelines where they're like, you need a 720 credit score. You need to basically be, you had to basically go into a situation where you had to be like overly qualified. Juliet said, I need to know what a balloon is. So whenever we're talking about a loan that has a balloon payment at the end, that basically means that there's a lump sum that's going to be added on to the end, or that's going to be a payment at the end. So actually, I was talking about the pandemic and shutdown and what happened. So let's say you had a 30-year loan, okay? A balloon payment is just something that happens at the end, okay? It's just a big lump that will be on the end of a loan. So what happens is this. Going back to the pandemic and lockdown, okay, a lot of people were taking forbearance, okay, where they were saying, hey, I'm not going to pay my mortgage or my loan for, 4 months, okay, and that was fine. What happened was the lender doesn't have the authority to extend your loan. So what they do is they add it as a balloon payment at the end. So I took advantage of that. I took advantage of it so that, I could just get some things that I needed around the house, some necessities like a new hot tub, things like that, just, a couple things. No, and actually I'm serious. So yes, that's exactly what a lot of people did. They took advantage of that situation. And they put a lot of the, and then what happens is, so my 4 months is just going to be at the end of my loan. So if I stay in my house for 30 years, which is not my intention, then what would happen is I would be paying at the end of my 30 years. I would just sit there and do that. Someone said I put it all in savings. You are a much smarter person than I. I did do a couple things. I did a couple things as far as smart things like that we could check off the box. However, I also have a bougie hot tub. Okay. So, yeah, so I hope that, and I'm glad that helped you out, Juliet. And that's why I'm saying keep writing in the chat box so that I know what questions to ask. So that was a really good one. Okay. So that being said, let's talk about the next one on the secondary market. Next one is Freddie Mac. He's just a smaller Fannie. Okay. He's just a smaller Fannie. That's it. I wish that there was more I could say. He's just a smaller Fannie. Then what happened was this. We have Ginnie, who is our government entity. So Ginnie doesn't buy things on the secondary market. She sells what's basically called pass-through certificates. So what happens is she incentivizes Freddie and Fannie to pick up some underserved loans and some loans that might be troubled, might be higher risk. So Ginnie Mae kind of says, hey, Fannie, do you want the string beans? And what happens is this. Fannie goes, no, I don't want string beans. Didn't you hear Stu? We could have ice cream or string beans. And then what happens is Ginnie sits there and goes, well, let me get some butter. Let me get some salt. And then Fannie's like, okay, yeah, we'll buy that, string bean loan. Like they're like, yeah, we'll take that loan that we normally wouldn't. Yeah, so that's basically like that's the best example I could give to you. Okay, Ginny Mae is the person who's basically forcing you to eat your vegetables. She forces Fannie and Freddie. She's like, come on, you gotta get these loans because if no one else picks them up, like we don't have anything going on. And Fannie Mae's like, no, I don't wanna. And Freddie's like, no, I don't wanna. And then you pour some butter on it, you put enough salt, and you're like, all right, I'll eat that string bean. So I hope that helped you out. Okay. So let's talk about the next thing, okay, which is Tila and Respa. Tila and Respa. Oh man, that gives so many people so much angst. Let's talk about Tila. Let's talk about Tila. What is Tila? So, and I'm glad that you're visual and that helped you out because that's what I'm here to do. Like I said, a lot of you guys put in that questionnaire that you want real world examples. So that helped me out because this is a little different than what I usually do. Okay. So I'm kind of catering to you guys. Okay. So this is the truth in lending. Okay. So isn't this what has to be shown at the closing? Not necessarily. I think I might answer that. So put a pin in that. Okay. Put a pin in the thought process in regards to what would be what has to be shown at closing. Thank you for pulling the words out of my mind. So this is also known as Regulation Z. Okay. So Regulation Z, truth in lending, think of them as synonymous with one another, okay? Because a lot of people say like there's a slight bit of nuance to it, yes, but for your test, they're the same. They're synonyms, okay? So they are going to refer to them as the same thing, okay? So when we're talking about truth in lending, and someone asked about triggering terms, so I'm going to go into triggering terms without kind of giving you the whole minutia of it because I'm doing this all off the top of my head too. So, and that's why I'm, a lot of people were saying triggering terms, hey, I want to know what those are. So yeah, I'm going to, like I said, give you my answer to the trigger terms. Okay. So the Truth in Lending Act, basically, consumer has to know about what the cost of borrowing money with their credit is. Okay, that's basically it. Basically, it's making sure that the consumer doesn't have a bamboozle fee, that they don't go, wait a second, what is that? What was that thing? Like, you didn't tell me about the bang bang boogie woogie fee. You didn't tell me about that. What is that? And then they go, oh, that's normal. Everyone pays that. Like, that's usually what happens. People go like this, like, yeah, everyone pays that. When does this have to be given to the buyer? So here's the thing. The loan estimate has to be given to the buyer, and all this stuff has to be given up front in regards to when they're being told about the loan, when they're applying for it. That's when I usually say, okay. So there's also disclosures that are given at the end of the transaction, which is TRID. Okay. And so here's the technical thing about the loan estimate. It has to basically be given. So I'll give you the technical. Okay. I'll give you the technical, Claire, because I think that the technical is important and I don't want to sugarcoat it. And I think that I was going down a road where I was sugarcoating it and I was going, meh. So the loan estimate, and I want to put this up here. Okay. The loan estimate has to be given within 3 days of the loan application being I'm going to check my notes just so that I make sure that I'm giving you the right day. Within 3 days of the loan application being completed. That's what I say. That's what my notes have. That's what I have there. So it has to be 3 days, okay? Within 3 days of the loan application being completed. Okay, so it has to do with the loan application. So we complete the loan application, must be given within a 3-day window. Okay, the loan estimate. Okay, that is what TILA is. TILA has to do with that. They also have to deal with advertising and triggering terms. Okay, so that's what people usually get tripped up. They say, okay, what are some triggering terms? what are some terms that would basically trigger me to have to disclose a whole bunch of things? Okay, so here's what I'm going to tell you as far as triggering terms, and I'm taking these from my notes. So let me just see something. Trigger terms. Okay, trigger terms is this. Okay, we have the amount of the or percentage of the down payment Here's another one. Okay. So someone asked, are we going to get a copy? I'm emailing everyone once I have this up on YouTube. Once I have this up on YouTube, you guys are all going to be sent a link that only works with that link. So you can only see it with that link, and that's going to be your way to access this for at least 1 month, okay? For at least 1 month, if not potentially longer. So you will get access to this if you do need to go. So don't you worry, okay? Also, number of payments, okay? Number of payments, okay? Then, if you had amount of any payment, okay? And bear with me because an amount of any finance charge, okay? And sorry for being so surgical with that, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to get that right from my my notes so that I wasn't mistaken anything there, because I know that you guys have, like I said, specific questions that you have, and I wanted to make sure that my notes were exactly what we're going off of. So these would, if you disclose any one of these in your advertising, okay, you would have to disclose all of those, okay? You would have to disclose all, okay? So you would have to disclose all of them, okay? So what are some non-triggering terms? If they're just saying financing are available, terms are negotiable, things like that, those are really, like, if it's vague and it doesn't go into, yeah, so Jennifer, you asked, let me see. Can you give some examples? What was I going to say? So Ashley, yes, that includes on Facebook too. So this is not going anywhere unless you have the link, unless you have paid me. So that is not going anywhere until it is, like I said, a certain period of time has passed. So why would someone advertise this? Well, if you're a lender, yeah, you would want to advertise this. So let me give you an example of why someone would want to advertise this. Truth in lending also has to do with car loans as well. So amount of any finance charge. So you ever see on a car commercial, they say, and you have 0.09% APR. And then how many people probably sit there and go, like, how many times have you been with your significant other? And you're like, oh my God, look, the financing charges are 0.09%. I think that's really good. Let's go down to Honda tomorrow. Okay. And then at the end of the commercial, they go, and then really fast. That's basically them telling you all these things because they just said the amount of the finance charge. Does that make sense? So that, I hope that answers the why would someone advertise that, right? So it says, yeah, it says a bunch of things that you could see. So again, things that you wouldn't get, right, are things that are going to be such as like generous financing terms available. So that is all Tila. And here's what I'm going to tell you. I always tell people this. Treat Tila and Respa as two sides to a quarter, okay? Two sides to a quarter. So think of Tila as heads, okay? Okay. And then Respa as tails, okay? And I'll tell you why, because this is usually, I always say head leads, you lead with your head, okay? Tila, that's the upfront thing. That's the loan. That's basically saying, hey, with the loan application, you have to disclose everything. You have to get the loan estimate. Whenever you're advertising any kind of triggering terms, you have to disclose all of them. If you have non-triggering terms in your advertisement, like generous terms available, financing available, all that kind of stuff, that's fine. You don't need to disclose everything then, because those are just really, I would say, broad strokes of the pen, okay? So that's the situation with that. Okay, now let's talk about Respa for a second, okay? Let's talk about Respa. So if Tila covers the, whatchamacallit, the finance charges, right, and the lending. Okay, so if Tila covers lending, then Respa, okay, then Respa is going to cover, okay, Respa is going to cover the whatchamacallit, the settlement procedures or the settlement services. Okay. So this requires a couple things. So the main thing that RESPA covers, and that stands for the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. The main thing RESPA covers is this, making sure that there's no kickbacks amongst any of the lenders or providers or agents in regards to recommending any services. So let's say I recommend to you Home Inspector Bob. And Home Inspector Bob, you're like, oh, Stu recommended him because Home Inspector Bob is an absolutely phenomenal home inspector. And then you come to find out, you know, Home Inspector Bob is actually a really, really, really poopy home inspector. And Home Inspector Bob actually only has one eye and he limps a little bit. And you're like, I don't think this is going to be a good home inspection. And you're like, Stu, why did you recommend them? And then all of a sudden, like 3 days before, you're on my Facebook page and you see Stu at the Yankees game in a luxury suite. And I go, thank you, Home Inspector Bob. And I'm like taking pictures and selfies. And I'm like, oh my God, unlimited chicken tendies. Oh, this is my favorite. Okay. Then what happens is this. If you find out that, hey, like I didn't recommend Home Inspector Bob because Home Inspector Bob's a good home inspector. I recommended him because of the luxury box that he puts me up in. Okay, that he has all these connections at the Yankees games, all that kind of stuff. Oh, yeah, you know, I mean, that's a problem. So you as an agent, you cannot be accepting any kind of kickbacks from anybody like that. Okay, like inspectors, attorneys, and things of that nature. Also, you can't be recommending people or have any kind of like inference that people are paying you for things. Like I had a lender who used to send me these amazing bougie cookies every single time I closed the deal with her. And I was like, oh no, we can't do bougie cookies anymore because like, I love your bougie cookies and I want more of them, but like, I can't be closing loans with you in anticipation for the yummy cookies that I'm gonna get in my mailbox. And literally there was like 200 cookies. Like we're not talking like 5 cookies. We're talking like enough cookies that would sway my decisions one way or another. So I was like, no, you can't send me any more of the delicious, wonderful cookies. I was like, you could randomly just send them to me, but not in like association with like a deal or something like that. No, but here's the thing. You can't even get them randomly. You can't even get random cookies. Okay. Because RESPA says you cannot do that. Okay. Also, it says that there needs to be a clear disclosure of the cost of the settlement services. Okay. So here's the thing. The reason why is because you want to see, hey, is Home Inspector Bob charging me more money than he should be charging me because he just put Stu up in a bougie luxury suite, right? Is he charging me more than what the norm is? Okay. So RESPA says, hey, you need to disclose that. Just as I said, heads was the disclosure of the finance charges. This is tails. So this is the disclosure of any of the settlement services. So when we combine them into one beautiful thing, it is called TRID. The Tila Respa Integrated Disclosures. Oh my bamboozleness. It's in the name. It's in the name. TRID is the Tila Respa Integrated Disclosures, meaning when Tila and Respa integrate, like for a closing disclosure, okay, that is the whole entire thing. So if this is heads and this is tails, then TRID is the quarter. Does that make sense, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Let me know in the chat box if that makes sense to you, if that cleared it up. Yeah, that's what I like. That's what I like. That's what I like. Finally, Ashley said finally. Finally, someone's explaining this in English to me, not in Latin. Okay? So that's why, again, people always say, I get confused with Tila, I get confused with Respa, because here's the thing, they're both disclosures, and they do integrate at some point, like for the closing disclosure, right? The closing disclosure is where the two of them integrate, okay? Where the settlement services are going to be disclosed and the loan estimates are going to be put together into a closing disclosure where there's going to be, oh my gosh, say it with me, say it with me, say it loud, say it proud, credits and debits. I haven't forgotten about you. You are not my forgotten children. I do remember things. credits and debits and credits and debits and credits and debits. Okay. So Jennifer put in the chat, so for triggering terms, if I advertise $1,500 down payment, then that is a triggering term. But if I say reasonable terms, not triggering. Yes, reasonable terms, not triggering. Actual amount, triggering. Okay. Generous financing available. Cool, fine. But you put $1,500 down. That's why in a lot of the car commercials, you'll see they'll put something in there that's a specific thing. Okay. They'll put a specific, like they'll say $3,000 down, and you get it for $400 a month, and then all of a sudden you have the guy that talks really fast at the end of at the end of the commercial, and you're like, oh, I don't know why they have to say that. It's because of this. It's because of this. That's Tila. That is actually Tila. That is a real life Tila that you could touch. You can look at it and you can go, oh my gosh, that's what it is. Okay. So let's talk about credits and debits. Credits and debits and credits and debits and credits and debits and credits and debits. So what we have to talk about is this. We have to talk about what we are actually solving for in regards to the buyer and the sell side. Okay, because that's what we have. We have two sides here. Okay, we have completely two different sides. So the first thing is we have to decide for the buyer. Okay. So Claire wrote Regulation Z, same as RESPA. No, Regulation Z, Tila. That's heads. RESPA is RESPA. There is no nickname for RESPA. It's either RESPA or Real Estate Settlements and Procedures Act. That's it. Done. Black and white. For the buy side, we are trying to identify how much money do they need to pull out of the ATM or bank before they get to closing. That's it. Literally, that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, at the end of the buy side on that transaction, we are trying to figure out, do they need to pull that from an ATM or do they not? That is it. That is it. Do they owe that? Do they not? Seller, we are trying to figure out how much money do they walk away with? That is literally what we are solving for in the closing disclosure, okay? That is literally what we are solving for in the closing disclosure, okay? So someone asked what type of debits and credits questions will be on the test. So what I'll tell you is this: it could be a variety of questions that they're going to ask you. It will be more or less, maybe some proration questions, maybe some different ones. They'll ask you what might be a credit to the buyer, credit to the seller. So let me go over a couple things, because there's a lot of things that they could do. But once you have a really foundational understanding of this, I think that it helps, okay? So here's what it is. You ready? The first thing is the sale price, okay? That's a debit to the buyer, credit to the seller. So that's like line one. That's like how we start off everything, okay? That's how we start everything. Sale price, debit to the buyer, credit to the seller, okay? Meaning this is what the seller, so here's the thing. You ready? Just, and listen to me. Listen to, like, if you're not paying attention, if the dog's walking in the background and like your hot pockets are ready, the microwave just dinged. If you have not paid attention to one thing, listen right now what I'm telling you. If nothing else came into play, but there's always more stuff. If nothing else came into play, the buyer would have to come to the table, take out of the ATM the sale price, and the seller would walk away with the sale price. But, dear God, it's not that simple, okay? So what happens is there are other things that come into play. So again, like I said, you have to understand that if you understand that base foundation, you can answer almost everything. So people ask me, the loan amount, you know, what is that? So let me talk to you about that for a second. So the loan amount, so the buyer's getting a loan, okay? Whatever the loan amount is, now the loan might not cover the whole entire home purchase price, right? So the loan might be for $100,000, okay? And the home purchase price might have been for $150,000. So here's the thing. The buyer needs to take out of the ATM $50,000 then, right? If it was sold for 150 and the loan amount was 100,000. Let's say those are the only two things. The buyer has to take out of his bank account 50,000. Now, how does the loan appear on the closing disclosure? So let's talk a little bit about the difference between a debit and a credit, okay? A debit means you owe it. Debit means you owe. Credit means you get, okay? Because listen, when I go to Target, and I return something, because my wife is super sneaky. She's super sneaky. This is what she does. Every single thing that we get, if she doesn't know or remember where it came from, she returns it to Target or Walmart, and she gets store credit. She gets credit, okay? She gets credit. She always gets credit for something, okay? So we're always getting Walmart credits, okay? Where do we have Walmart credits lying around the house, okay? And here's the thing. We're not poor people either. Like we're not like strapping for cash, you know, but my wife will sit there if something like turns like, she's like, I forgot where I bought that from, but it shouldn't have broken or it shouldn't have done this. We're bringing it to Walmart. And I'm like, okay. So listen to what I'm going to tell you. Credit means you're getting a credit for it. You're getting something, okay? Debit means you owe it, okay? So the loan amount, is that a debit or a credit? Well, here's the thing. The buyer doesn't owe that money because does he need to pull it out of the ATM? No, he doesn't have to pull it out of the ATM because someone else is bringing it. So that's going to be a credit. We're going to put a C there next to the loan amount. Also, what else happens? Okay, what else happens? Situation is this. If you have a earnest money, okay, watch this. Earnest money, here's what I'll tell you with earnest money. Earnest money basically says this, okay? They have already put that money up, okay? So does the buyer need to pull it out of the ATM? No, they do not need to pull it out of the ATM because it's already in an escrow account somewhere. Credit. Do you see where we're going with this? If they need to pull it out of the ATM, because that's what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to do the math here. They bought the home for $150,000, okay? They take a loan out of $100,000. So now we're saying, okay, they owe $50,000. Follow the bouncing ball, all right? Now, let's say they put $10,000 into earnest money, okay? So we said that has to be a credit too. So now we're down to $40,000 that they need to pull out of the ATM or the bank. Do you see what I'm saying? Then let's say they have to pay for the recording of the deed, right? They have to pay for the recording of the deed. That's a debit, not taken into consideration yet, okay? Not taken into consideration yet. So what happens is we take let's say the recording of the deed was $10, okay? Have to add that to what they owe. So this is literally just a complicated tally sheet, okay? A complicated tally sheet. So Presley said, thank you. I've gotten a question recently about debits and credits when the seller already paid property taxes and then sells the property in March. Is that a credit or a debit to the buyer? So let's talk about that for a second. So I'm going to erase a couple things, okay? Do the magic eraser, all right? And just so it gives me some space, okay? And we're going to keep up top, okay? Like a checkbook. Yes, Angela, absolutely. It's like balancing a checkbook. That's literally what it is. It's literally balancing a checkbook. That's how simple it is. So watch this. So someone else said, Jennifer said, is the recording of the deed the responsibility of the buyer? So yes. Now listen, you put up a great point, Jennifer. So if the recording of the deed is the responsibility of the buyer, do we credit the seller? No. So here's the thing. It's not like a balance, like a 1-for-1. So if you're thinking that it might be like a checkbook like that, it is not. Because again, what we're trying to figure out is, and you have to keep in mind, keep true everything that we're saying here. Does the buyer need to bring it to the closing table? And is the seller walking away with it? Okay. So what happens is this. The recording of the deed is the responsibility of the buyer. So the buyer has to pay it, but it has nothing to do with the seller. The seller's still getting their money at the end of the day. So that is strictly a debit to the buyer, right? So now a question that was asked earlier was, okay, if the taxes have been paid for the year. So if the taxes have been paid for the year, and let me just do some simple math. Let me just say that the taxes were $1,200, okay? Then people say to me, is this a credit or a debit to the seller or the buyer? What's the story with this? So if taxes are paid for the whole year, so we're paid January through December, okay? Okay, 12 months. So we'd agree that it's $100 a month, okay? What happens is the seller's only going to be responsible for their time in the property. So if it closes March 1, okay, then they're only responsible for January and February. So that's 2 months. So that means that they're going to be credited back for the rest of the year because they're not using that, right? So they're going to be credited back for the rest of the year, $1,000, okay? And the buyer will be debited for the rest of the year, $1,000, okay? So that is the situation there. Credit the seller 1,000, debit the buyer 1,000. Yeah, that's exactly it. So what happens is, again, it all comes down to what the situation is in regards to, again, does the buyer need to pull this out of the ATM and bring this to the table? And also, you have a situation where you're looking at the credits and debits and you're saying to yourself, okay, someone said, Claire asked, is Earnest Money a credit to the buyer? Sorry, I missed it. Not a problem at all. That is a credit to the buyer because they don't need to pull that out of the ATM that's already been taken into consideration because that's already in escrow. So someone else is bringing that to the table. They don't need to pull that out of the ATM. And I hope that answered it for you. So what I will tell you is this. I'm going to be wrapping up shortly. And I wanted to ask you guys this. Do you have any other questions, concerns, burning desires that I haven't gone over yet? I also want to know if you guys like this, because if you think this is a great thing, if you guys say, hey, Stu, when will I have another one of these? I don't know yet. This was something that I'm doing once every couple of weeks. So please, this is what I want to tell you guys. What helps me, what helped the last one was when people said, no, this was awesome, Stu's webinar that was a little longer. And here's the thing. This is different from what I do on Prep Agent. This is different from what I do in a lot of the groups and in a lot of different things. So Jennifer said, taking the testimony, any last minute tips? Yeah, don't overthink it. Listen to some stand-up comedy on the way there, okay? Live in New Jersey. Hey, Jersey, love Jersey. So guys, like I said, I want to make sure, and someone else asked what to do the day before the exam. Try not to stress, guys. Try not to stress. Like if I could leave you with one thing, I would say that. Don't stress it, okay? Good luck. We had a couple people who also took the exam like the next day or the day after doing this, and I was like a little good luck charm. So hopefully we get some more passes out of this. But like I said, if you guys like this, put this in the Facebook group. Let people know that this was something different from what I usually done, and that it was great, and that you guys liked it. But what I'll tell you is this: I've been talking for 2 hours. And for the price I would join every time, and I'm also a member of Prep Agent. So look, I love that, and that's why, like I said, I tried to do this at a price that wouldn't break the bank, but would give you a little value that for people who might not be able to afford a 75-hour long private lesson with me. But what I'll tell you is this: when I put this up on Facebook and it could be seen by the general public, there are links down below for everything. And you guys, of course, that had access to this early will have access to it for for a while. So and I just want to tell you this: congratulations to Neil, you passed the exam. Fantastic. You passed because of Prep Agent. Yeah, sign up down below if you're not a Prep Agent member. Links down below. And again, guys, good luck. Have a great one, and thank you so much for participating in this. I hope you guys had a great time, and I will be emailing everyone a link by end of day tomorrow. Take care, guys, and have a great one.